Discover 7 incredible sleep secrets revealed. Transform your nights with these surprising facts. Sarah Mitchell sat on the edge of her bed, the weight of her exhaustion pinning her down like a lead blanket. A throbbing headache pulsed behind her eyes, born from another night of tossing and turning, trying to find a comfortable position amid the chaos of her life. The clock ticked deviously, mocking her attempt to catch even a glimmer of rest before rising to face another grueling day. 2 jobs, a teenager wrestling with anxiety, and an excitable 7-year-old wearing down her patience, all while she tried to hold herself together in the heart of her small Midwestern town. She sighed, the breath a mixture of fatigue and frustration. Wasn't there a way to pause this relentless cycle of sleeplessness? She'd heard of Professor Henry Wells, the local eccentric with a knack for sleep studies. His advertisements promised not just better sleep, but a pathway to rejuvenation. The prospect intrigued her, yet she hesitated, grappling with the judgment of seeking help from an oddball. But as the burden of caring for Jake and Lily wore on her spirit, the thought of transformation glimmered like a distant star flickering in the dark sky. What if his secrets could truly shift her reality? As days blurred into nights, her responsibilities pressed upon her. The mornings blurred into evenings, where she worked grueling shifts at the diner, then spent hours on the computer from home doing freelance graphic design work, quickly crashing into bed next to Lily's soft breathing, and longing for a quiet that never came. The thought of facing Jake's growing anxiety made her heart ache. She couldn't fail him, not now. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But just as sleep felt within her grasp, a wave of anxiety surged. Rumors spread of a corporate giant moving in, proposing a factory that threatened her town's soul. It deepened her internal conflict. Could she strive for better sleep and self-care when her neighbors faced losing everything? She clenched her fists, torn between her growing sense of self from the professor and her fierce loyalty to her overburdened town. If she stood up, would she risk the stability her children relied on? Pressure mounted, her dreams rife with images of corporate greed strangling the life from her community. She would stay up late, staring at the ceiling, haunted by the whirlwind of thoughts about how to fight back without jeopardizing her children's future. Each moment of clarity offered by the professor felt overshadowed by the looming threat. Fear clawed at her mercilessly. How could she focus on self-care when the shadows outside crept closer, devouring the joy she struggled to maintain? At night, the darkness deepened and the stakes became more apparent. The weight of her commitments wrapped around her like suffocating vines. She breathed deeply, frantically searching for the courage she lacked. As the sun rose, the shadows of doubt lingered in her heart. A chilling realization whispered that true rest demanded a fight she wasn't ready to wage. Yet she knew she had to choose. How could she honor her family and the legacy of resilience they had instilled in her? Standing at this precipice, she grappled with the truth. To truly rest, she must confront the storm brewing around her. And as she sat alone, fear and determination waged a war within her. The haunting echoes of her grandmother's wisdom pulsating in her mind, catalyzing a desperate question. Was she strong enough to embrace the fight for what mattered, even as the fog of anxiety hung thick around her? With a deep breath, Sarah swung her legs off the bed and placed her feet on the cool floor. Her mind raced with conflicting thoughts. Should she prioritize her family's urgent needs over her quest for self-care? The time spent contemplating sleep secrets felt almost indulgent, a luxury she didn't recognize. Yet the exhaustion weighed heavily on her spirit, urging her to take action. As Jake walked through the hallway, the outline of a troubled teenager loomed against the morning light filtering through the curtains. He had taken to locking himself in his room again, stifling his anxiety but making it harder for Sarah to reach out. She longed to comfort him, to tell him everything would be fine, but the words faltered in her throat. "Mom?" His voice broke the silence like glass shattering. "Can we talk?" She nodded, heart racing at the opportunity to connect, yet unsure how to navigate the anxiety flickering in his eyes. They settled at the kitchen table, where breakfast lay untouched, a perfect reflection of their tumultuous lives. The air thickened with unspoken words, afraid of the truths they might unveil. "Mom?" His brow furrowed deeply, shadows mirroring her own. "You seem stressed." The truth weighed heavy, but the moment felt defining. "I'm trying to figure things out, Jake. Your anxiety, my work, everything. It feels like too much sometimes." She met his gaze with equal parts honesty and vulnerability, a strategy she wasn't sure would resonate, but realized was essential. His burdens should never grow heavier from her own. Jake pushed back. "It's okay to not be okay, you know. Everyone is struggling with something." His voicing echoed her own internal turmoil, igniting a flicker of hope. They were in this together, even as they fought different battles. "Then what do we do?" she asked, leaning forward. His instinctive shrug revealed their shared uncertainty. That moment marked a shift in her perspective. The shadows lurking around her didn't just threaten her tranquility, they chose to redefine her fight. If her children were to navigate this chaotic world, she needed to be the example of resilience and courage. Maybe she didn't need to fully embrace the professor's secrets to begin her journey of change. It was time for her to reclaim her narrative, one that involved both self-improvement and community action. Thoughts raced. To prioritize herself wouldn't be selfish. It might be the key to not only protecting her children, but also uniting their family against the upcoming storm. What if she stood up against the corporate intrusion? Not just for herself, but as an assurance to Jake that the values they cherished would endure. Determined, Sarah decided to seek out Professor Wells, thinking of his methods as an anchor amidst the chaos. With a newfound sense of purpose, she reached for her phone to call him. As she dialed, the rhythmic anticipation of his voice seemed to pulse with an unseen energy, propelling her forward. "Hello, Professor Wells. It's Sarah," she said, the tremor in her voice betraying her nervousness. "I want to start working on those sleep strategies we talked about, but also something more." "More?" he echoed, piquing her curiosity. She hadn't even begun to articulate what she planned to fight for. Just as she opened her mouth to define her vision, they were interrupted. A knock echoed through her home, ricocheting off the walls with urgency. As she glanced towards the door, her heart sank at the sight of familiar faces. Neighbors, friends, and the community that had inadvertently come to represent everything she valued. They were drawn together by the local rumors she had hoped to ignore, and fear began to seep back into her resolve. She was no longer just a mother seeking sleep. She had become a conduit for change, a pivot point around which the dynamic of her life was shifting. But would she have the courage to stand firm when all eyes were on her? As her neighbor's anxious expressions filled her vision, a singular question grew louder within her, or held by a delicate thread. Could she embrace this unfolding challenge her community faced, or would she retreat into the shadows of self-doubt? The call had begun, but the true confrontation was yet to come. The room felt stifling, filled with the weight of expectation. Sarah stood at the threshold of her own resolve, glancing from the door back to the gathered faces of her neighbors. Each one wore a mask of concern, their eyes scanning hers for a sign, an assurance that they were on the right path. She felt the pressure of their collective gaze, and for a fleeting moment, doubt washed over her like a chill. "Sarah, have you heard about what's happening at the old mill?" one of her neighbors asked, breaking the silence. The question hung heavily in the air, drawing her back into focus. She nodded, taking a deep breath and trying to compose herself. "I know about the plans. It's been a topic of debate." Her voice felt steadier than she expected, reflection of a growing resolve. "Do you think we can do anything?" Another voice chimed in, challenging the silence that had grown between them. "If they take that property, it'll change everything. The noise, the traffic, the pollution. It won't just impact us, it'll strike at the heart of our community." The thought echoed with urgency in Sarah's mind. Wasn't this what she had been grappling with? This corporate encroachment that threatened not just their physical space, but the fabric of their lives. If she wanted to teach Jake about resilience, this was the battleground where she needed to start. "Yes," she said, her voice rising slightly. "We can organize a meeting, gather thoughts, and create a plan. It's time we stood up for what we value." The determination in her voice surprised her, yet felt thrillingly right. A palpable shift occurred in the room. Whispers of agreement rippled through the crowd. Sarah saw a spark ignite in several faces, transforming uncertainty into something altogether more powerful: hope. But with this surge of momentum came another wave of anxiety. Her mind flashed back to Professor Wells's teachings. He had emphasized the importance of structure in pursuing goals. Without it, intentions could dissolve into mere wishes, lost amidst the chaos. Could she channel her newfound determination into an actionable plan? "Let's meet again tomorrow evening," she said. "I can bring everyone together at my house again. We'll brainstorm. What do you think?" Excited nods spread through the group. The feeling in the air was palpable. She could sense that they were stepping towards something significant, a change that extended beyond herself. As the crowd started to disperse, Sarah felt a mix of responsibility and exhilaration settle in her heart. A part of her questioned whether she had the endurance to see this through, or if the pressure would become too heavy. Yet another part felt emboldened by the conversation. This was her chance to lead, not just for herself, but for her family and their neighbors. The stakes felt high, but the call to action steadied her. Still, Sarah found herself grappling with an unsettling truth. It was easy to inspire hope amongst her neighbors, but how would she harness that energy moving forward? The doubts whispered relentlessly, fabricating scenarios where she failed to rally her community's strength and courage. Retreating to her kitchen, the silence embraced her, a contrast to the earlier tension. Here, she could gather her thoughts and strategize. Pulling out a notepad, she began jotting down ideas, notes from the professor's lessons warring alongside her personal sentiments. Building a coalition against corporate encroachment required tangible steps. Write letters, gather signatures, host workshops. All those ideas felt daunting, yet essential. Yet, deep down, she recognized that this could easily spiral into a messy conflict. What if they faced opposition? What if powerful voices belittled her attempts? This tension twisted inside her, the realization that her emotional buoyancy would be tested sorely in the days to come. The frantic scratching of her pen paused as she felt a familiar voice echo in her mind. Professor Wells and his analogy about the butterfly effect. One small action could lead to monumental changes, transforming lives in unpredictable ways. In that moment of reflection, Sarah recognized that this journey was not just about fighting against the corporate machine. It was a nuanced dance of personal growth and leadership. Just as enthusiasm bubbled within her, the buzz of her phone pulled her back. A message from Jake flared on the screen. "Mom, I'm home. We need to talk." The excitement of her new mission dimmed under a growing sense of unease. With challenges rising on multiple fronts, how would she balance the weight of her ambitions with the emotional needs of her family? In those quick seconds, she felt the looming specter of confrontation take shape again. As she readied herself to face Jake, the knowledge of her own limitations gnawed at her. Could she emerge as the leader her community needed while still being the mother Jake deserved? The balance between her formidable new aspirations and her role within her family hung in the air, poised and tantalizing. She took a deep breath and steeled herself, ready to face whatever moment awaited her next. Sarah stood at the kitchen counter, her heart still racing from the earlier meeting. The excitement of igniting change collided with the anxiety of what awaited her in the living room. Jake awaited her, and between them lay more than just the day's events. There rested uncharted territory, the delicate balance of motherhood and her burgeoning aspirations. Peering into the living room, she saw Jake slumped in the armchair, the weight of his own unease palpable as he fidgeted with his phone. This was not the casual, carefree boy who had once rushed to share stories about his day. This was a Jake caught in a maelstrom of adolescent worries, and that alone clawed at her heart. She swallowed hard, knowing she was not just a mother right now, but a leader, confronted with the dual task of being there for her son while stepping into uncharted waters herself. "Hey, buddy," she said, forcing a smile as she sat across from him, keenly aware of the emotional tightrope she was walking. "Mom," he started, his voice low, laced with uncertainty. "I heard what happened with the mill. Are you sure it's a good idea?" The question hung heavy, laden with an unspoken fear. Sarah felt the duality of her role. She was determined to fight for their home, but wary of how this path might affect her family. "I think it's important," she replied cautiously, conscious of the need to validate his feelings. "But I want to know what you think." His brow furrowed as he spoke, each word tumbling out in a rush. "It just feels like you're taking on a lot. What if it gets out of hand? What if they don't listen and you get hurt?" His concern cut deeper than any critique from her neighbors. Jake was seeing the sheer weight of her omissions, their potential impact rippling through their lives. "You worry I'll fail?" she probed gently, trying to uncover the root of his apprehensions. "It's not just that. What if the company fights back?" Jake leaned forward, vulnerability etched across his face. "You tell me all the time about standing up for what's right, but what if standing up means we lose everything?" His words reverberated like a deep drumbeat in her chest, forcing her to confront the truth she'd shoved aside. The risk was real, and not just a challenge for her, but for Jake as well. "I understand you're scared," she said softly. "This is new territory for both of us. But sometimes fighting for what's right comes with risks. I want to teach you that standing up can make a difference, but I also want to make sure I'm not dragging you into something harmful." There were lessons embedded in those moments about leadership, resilience, and even the weight of personal responsibility. This was no longer just about an old mill. It was about integrity and the courage to pursue one's convictions no matter the cost. She watched as he absorbed her words, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "I just want you to be okay," he finally admitted, his voice cracking a bit. "Mom, I'm proud of you for wanting to make it better, but what if things get complicated? Can you really handle this?" The question lingered in the air, a living entity that morphed into the narrative of her life. Faced with uncertainty, Sarah realized the grit required, not just on her part, but from her son. He had instincts she had overlooked in her pursuit. In that moment, a new idea flickered in her mind. What if she brought Jake into her plans? Maybe their challenges could unify rather than divide them. "I hear you, and I want you to know I need you too. We can face this together," she suggested, excitement tinged with nervousness bubbling. "Want to help me come up with ideas on how we can voice our concerns effectively?" Jake's eyes widened slightly, the weight of his fears momentarily replaced with curiosity. "What do you mean?" Encouraged by a newfound sense of purpose, Sarah leaned forward. "We can research the company, write letters together, even brainstorm ways to get others involved. I may lead, but I need my best advisor by my side." A tentative smile broke through Jake's earlier reluctance, revealing the connection forming between their shared ambitions. It would be bumpy, but perhaps this partnership would be the catalyst for both of their growths. As Sarah contemplated this uncharted alliance, she felt the intertwining threads of motherhood and leadership pull tighter, presenting an enticing challenge that could transform their relationship. Just as potential bloomed in her mind, Jake's phone buzzed, revealing a message that could change everything once again. "We need to talk about the plans for the—" "There's something you should know." That moment could unearth all she had carefully planned. Would their hidden truths jeopardize her budding mission? And could jeopardizing her ambitions lead to the revelation of deeper connections? Sarah took a breath, aware that not only was she entering the fray as a citizen addressing her community, but as a mother exploring the bounds of courage with her son at her side. The message hung in the air, its implications swirling in Sarah's mind like autumn leaves caught in a gust. The urgency of it clawed at her focus. She had only just begun to navigate this shared path with Jake, and now another curveball threatened to derail their plans. "Jake, let's figure this out," she said, trying to sound composed, but her pulse quickened. She moved to grab her laptop from the kitchen counter where it rested. "We'll need to see what information they're sharing. This could be crucial." As she opened the screen and the familiar glow illuminated her face, the atmosphere of optimism they had just built began to fracture. Jake leaned closer, the trepidation returning to his eyes. "Do you really think this is a good idea? What if it's dangerous?" His concern dug at her, revealing a fissure in her confident facade. "We will be careful. Knowledge is power, and the more we know, the better we can navigate whatever is coming our way." Sarah hesitated, pondering her next move. She had always envisioned herself as a strong figure, but uncertainty was creeping in. They devoted the next hour to researching the company's history and its dealings with the mill. What Sarah found made her stomach churn. There were warnings about layoffs and a looming restructuring, with murmurs from other townsfolk surfacing in forums, echoing their fears. This was not merely about saving a building, it was a fight for their livelihoods. The stakes were escalating rapidly, and part of her wondered if they were stepping too far into dark waters. "Mom, this sounds like a mess," Jake said cautiously. "What if they've got allies that could turn on us?" His words brought her back to reality. Leadership was not about fearlessness. It was about making calculated decisions that accurately appraised potential risks. Their bond was newly fortified by collaboration, but she couldn't let Jake slip deeper into this risky world without considering the potential fallout. "Trust is crucial," she finally responded, carefully selecting her words. "But it's also about understanding what we can lose. I want us to be prepared, whatever that means." After hours of scrolling through articles and planning, a sudden thought struck her. Maybe Jake had deeper insights to offer. His perspective had been valuable, revealing concerns she herself had overlooked. "What do you think the community would want to hear from us?" As they brainstormed, Jake's initial hesitation melted away, replaced by a spark of determination. "People want to know if it's worth the fight. They need to see that standing up means standing for something bigger." Sarah's heart swelled with pride. This was the partnership she had envisioned, a blend of their strengths that transcended mother and son. Yet, ambitious ideas quickly gave way to something else, unshakable doubt. "But am I ready for this?" she thought, balancing the excitement of newfound collaboration against the stark reality of the risks involved. "Let's write a compelling letter," Jake suggested, bringing her back to the task at hand. "Something that speaks to everyone's hopes but also acknowledges their fears." Her soul ignited with purpose. She marveled at how their dynamic shifted. He was evolving into a confident voice alongside her, embodying the spirit they envisioned for their fight. Yet, with each word they forged, Sarah felt the grip of trepidation deepen. What if their efforts only garnered backlash? What if those intentions backfired? It was time to solidify their strategy, she decided, along with distilling that surge of anxious adrenaline into a plan of action that felt tangible. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle in her chest. We should present our ideas to a few trusted neighbors before going public, she reasoned, mapping out their next practical steps. Before she could elaborate, Jake's phone buzzed again, pulling them out of their thoughts. The message was from an unknown number, sending her heart racing once more. "Meet me at the old mill at 7 tonight. You need to know what I know." The clock was ticking, and now uncertainties lurked like shadows. Sarah felt all her strength teeter. Was she ready to confront whoever was behind this message? She looked at Jake, who now shared in her uncertainty, their eyes locking in a silent agreement. The night loomed ahead, full of potential discovery, but it also threatened their newfound partnership. Sarah realized with a sharp pang of clarity that every step forward could very well lead them down a path neither of them anticipated or prepared for. Was she prepared to unveil the truth behind the mill, even if it meant risking everything? As they gathered their thoughts and supplies for the meeting, she understood that all they had achieved thus far was merely a prelude. The real test awaited them at the hour's end, and the outcomes were still unwritten. With the sun sinking beyond the horizon, Sarah's thoughts raced faster than the impending dusk. The familiar chill in the air mirrored the tension burgeoning in her chest. "We have to be prepared for anything," she murmured, the words barely escaping her lips as they made their way to the old mill. Each step felt heavier, laden with dread and a flicker of resolve. Jake walked beside her, glancing at the streetlights flickering into life, illuminating their path with a pale glow. His youthfulness grounded her, reminding her of the unwavering spirit they once shared. But tonight was different. There was a palpable weight to the atmosphere, a sense that the meeting would either fortify their bond or fracture it under the strain of unwelcome truths. "Do you think this person knows something we don't?" Jake's voice broke the silence that had become heavier with every heartbeat. "I hope they do, but what if they don't?" The thought loomed over her like the impending night sky, dark and foreboding. "We have to approach this carefully. Trust can be both a weapon and a shield." As they reached the mill, the dilapidated structure loomed larger against the twilight, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch toward them, ready to engulf them. She hesitated at the entrance, doubts swirling like a tempest. "What if this is a trap, Jake?" The question hung between them, heavy with the reality of their situation. "Then we'll figure it out together," he insisted, his determination palpable. "We'll adapt. We always do." Sarah couldn't help but admire the clarity in his voice, the confidence that melted her apprehension just slightly. With a deep breath, she stepped inside, the air thick with dust and memories. The wooden floor creaked beneath their weight, and as they moved further in, the silhouettes of forgotten machinery cast eerie forms on the walls. They scanned the dim interior, the silence only interrupted by the sound of their footsteps. Her heart raced, each beat reminding her of the stakes at hand. Was she ready to lay bare their intentions, to confront the unknown, and perhaps bring to light elements they couldn't fathom? Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a silhouette that blurred the line between friend and foe. "You came." The voice was low, cautioning yet familiar, sending a jolt through Sarah. "Who are you?" Sarah demanded, instinctively positioning herself protectively beside Jake. "Someone who knows the secrets of this place." The figure stepped into the faint light, revealing a face etched with age and wisdom, yet clouded by fear. "I've watched what's happening, and you should know it's not what it seems." The warning spun through her mind. "What do you mean?" Sarah pressed, desperation mingling with determination. She could feel the weight of Jake's gaze upon her, a mirror reflecting her own fear. The time for uncertainty was over. They needed answers. "I know where the money is going," the figure continued, voice thick with urgency. "And it isn't being used to benefit anyone in this community. You've stumbled into something much larger than just a mill. It involves every single one of you." The implications sent shockwaves through her. Sarah's pulse quickened. She felt the threads of their discovery begin to weave a much more complex tapestry than mere layoffs and restructuring. This was about corruption, perhaps even betrayal. Jake stepped forward, the space between them shrinking under the weight of the revelation. What do we do with this information? Her heart pounded as she processed the magnitude of the claims. What they might uncover next hinged not only on their willingness to act, but also on their ability to handle the fallout. She swallowed hard, uncertainty clawing at her resolve, but determination surged beneath the surface. "We go to the people," she finally decided. "But first, we need to verify this. We cannot act blindly." "Are you ready for the risk?" Jake queried softly, catching her eye. It was a question that dug deeper than the moment, challenging her to confront not just the external threats, but also her internal fears. "Yes," she replied, her voice steady and resonant. It was a promise not just to Jake, but an untangling of her very being, a commitment to not only find the truth, but to face whatever lay in the shadows head-on. As they turned to leave, the figure's voice stopped her. "You must decide quickly. The longer you wait, the harder it will become." With a shared glance, Sarah and Jake knew they were on a precipice. The time had come to face the unknown, together. Yet, as the door creaked open, a thought struck her. The realm of sacrifice loomed closer. How would they balance dedication to their cause with the well-being of those they cherished most? Eager anticipation crackled between them, but a deeper dread began to coil around her heart. Was she truly prepared for the battle ahead, or would her resolve crumble under the weight of hidden truths? Stepping out of the mill, Sarah felt the chill in the air prick her skin, a stark contrast to the heat of the revelations they had just faced. The streets were enveloped in an unsettling calm, the kind that wrapped around her like a fog, making the truth feel more elusive. She took a deep breath, trying to center herself amid the whirlwind of thoughts that threatened to overwhelm her. "Verification," she whispered, as if speaking the word aloud could ground her. "We need to verify everything before we take the next step." It was a mantra that echoed in her mind, yet it was clear that the path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty. Jake, still beside her, seemed to pick up on her unease. "You're worried about how to proceed, aren't you?" His question was gentle, revealing an intuitive understanding of her inner turmoil. "Yes," she admitted, pulling her jacket tighter around her shoulders. "If this is true, we have to be ready for the fallout. What if we expose this and it backfires? What if—" The thought hung heavy in the air, a dark cloud of possibilities that threatened to obscure her determination. Jake reached for her arm, an anchor in the turbulent sea of doubt. "You're stronger than you think, Sarah. If anyone can handle this, it's you." His words ignited a flicker of confidence within her. Perhaps she had underestimated her own capabilities. As they continued down the street, Sarah began to examine what she could offer. Her analytical mindset, her history of navigating organizational challenges, and more importantly, her growing willingness to confront concerns head-on. When they reached her car, she fumbled for the keys, her hands shaking slightly. She took a moment to breathe and collect her thoughts. Every decision they made from here onwards needed to stem from clarity and purpose. "I have contacts at the library," she said suddenly. "I can access financial records and old reports. If there's anything hidden, I can dig it up." Jake nodded, a smile creeping onto his face. "That's the spirit. We'll find out where the money is really going and make a plan." His support felt like an infusion of strength, but it also highlighted the grave implications of their task. But what if we uncover something bigger than we expect? The question sent a chill through her. Then we deal with it. That's what we've always done. She was determined, yet the potential for uncovered deceit unsettled her. As they drove, Sarah's thoughts turned inward. She was no longer the indecisive woman clinging to the safety of anonymity. She was evolving, ready to face a harsh reality. She replayed conversations in her mind, recalling the names mentioned and the connections that might lead to answers. Her insight was sharpening. A new resolve formed within her. She could not shy away from the risks any longer. Arriving at the library, they maneuvered through its labyrinth of tall shelves, the scent of paper and ink surrounding them. As she navigated the aisles, Sarah realized that every moment spent in fear only served to solidify her hesitance. She needed to shift her mindset. Hesitation was not an option any longer. Sliding her fingers over the spine of a dusty report, she felt a pulse of excitement. This might be it, she breathed. Flipping through the pages, numbers and figures unfolded before her like an intricate puzzle, each crunch of data potentially leading to explosive conclusions. She felt invigorated. The weight of uncertainty receded as knowledge took its place. But just as hope began to surge, a voice broke her concentration. "You shouldn't be here." The utterance was abrupt and laced with authority, sending a jolt through her system. Caught in the act of discovery, Sarah turned slowly, heart pounding as she faced the inevitable confrontation. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. But within her, a different kind of resolve was forming, a determination sparked by the necessity to protect what she was uncovering. The confrontation would either build her further or threaten the very foundations of her newfound empowerment. There was an urgency in her blood, whispering that her moment of truth had arrived. As she stood there, face to face with an unexpected adversary, she felt the stakes rise higher than ever before. She could either retreat into the shadows of fear or step forward into the light of truth. The figure before Sarah was tall and imposing, a silhouette carved against the dim library lights. Every instinct in her screamed to retreat, but she couldn't allow herself to falter now. She had come too far, and her quest for truth had just transformed into a test of her resolve. "I'm only doing some research," she offered, her words layered with a mixture of defiance and anxiety. The stranger regarded her with a scrutinizing gaze, the corners of his mouth twitching as if he'd just heard a joke he didn't find funny. Research? In a restricted section? He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "You're poking your nose in places that don't want to be disturbed." Anxiety coiled tighter in her chest, but she stood firm, embracing the grounding reminder of Jake's earlier words. She was stronger than she believed. As he spoke, she scanned the area for potential allies or routes of escape, even as adrenaline fired her determination. "I'm not afraid of the truth," she said, though doubt crept into her voice. It was a fragile shield, one that could shatter if he pressed harder. But before he could respond, the spark of courage ignited a flurry of thoughts. "If you're trying to conceal something your organization is up to, then I deserve to know." He chuckled, a sound imbued with a hint of menace. "You think you can uncover something the professionals can't? What makes you so special?" His words hit like a slap. She felt them resonate deep within her, striking against her already jumbled self-worth. But that moment of self-doubt crystallized into clarity. She recognized that she was fighting not just against external barriers, but the internal ones she had erected for years. "I know how to dig," she said, her voice gaining strength. "Whatever corruption there is will breathe in the light. I will bring it to the surface." The man's eyes narrowed, seemingly gauging her resolve. In his silence, Sarah gleaned a fleeting opportunity. If she could angle this encounter, transform it into leverage, then she could assert her newfound courage rather than shrinking back in fear. She decided to confront him with an audacity she didn't know she possessed. "Are you afraid of being exposed?" she probed, watching for a reaction. He straightened slightly, and for a moment, uncertainty flickered across his face. Was he more than a guard dog for the system she was challenging? This tiny crack offered Sarah a glimpse of her potential. She pressed on. "You might be protectors of whatever is hidden here, but I have resources. I will expose these wrongdoings, with or without your permission." Their standoff felt electric. She knew she was standing at an intersection of growth. Her battle for the truth had morphed into a battle for her confidence, a struggle that had become personal. How high were the stakes, and how much was she willing to risk? Just then, the man's expression shifted. This wasn't the end. "You might think you can play a dangerous game. Fair warning, not all fires keep you warm." His words were chilling, leaving an echo of foreboding in her mind. She felt a wave of determination crash over her, forged in the very heart of the danger that surrounded her. Tall shelves laden with secrets loomed around them, the weight of history pressing down like an unspoken promise of revelation. "Then all prepare for the flames," she replied, defiance solidifying her voice. As he turned on his heel to retreat deeper into the shadows, a fresh urgency pulsed through her veins. This wasn't merely about uncovering hidden truths anymore. It was about the fight to reclaim her story, to use knowledge as a weapon to reshape her identity. But the confrontation had left her with more than adrenaline. It had opened doors she didn't know existed. She needed to move fast, to harness this energy and churn it into decisive action. With a renewed sense of purpose, she grabbed her pen and paper, determined to sketch out a plan of attack to methodically dismantle the layers of deception. What else was she capable of if liberation was within her grasp? And as she dug through the immense amount of records at her disposal, an unexpected thought crossed her mind. How many shadows were lurking beyond this library, just waiting to be unearthed? Desire for exploration surged through her, beckoning her to delve deeper. The stakes had shifted dramatically, and soon the chilling question coursed through her. Who else would she have to confront to wield the truth she sought? Determined to keep the momentum of her adrenaline-fueled clarity, Sarah spread out the documents she had gathered on the massive wooden table. Dust motes danced in the faint light, and the overwhelming scent of old paper enveloped her like a comforting embrace. It was here, in this sanctuary of knowledge, that she would craft the next phase of her plan. Each page contained bits and pieces of information that, when woven together, could paint a picture of the darker side of the institution. She leaned closer to the texts, her mind racing to discern patterns, connections, and hidden trails of betrayal. It felt like solving a puzzle, with each misplaced piece holding the weight of her reality. She craved the clarity and purpose that accompanied understanding. Suddenly, a chilling thought crossed her mind. What if everything she uncovered carried consequences she wasn't ready to handle? The chill of uncertainty threatened to unravel her newfound confidence. Yet she quickly reminded herself of the man's dismissive words. If she let fear fester, it would undermine her very quest. She couldn't afford to back down now. With steely resolve, she refocused. Perhaps she lacked experience, but she possessed an uncanny ability to synthesize information and discover insights where others might overlook. Her years of writing articles, laced with determination, had honed her research skills into a formidable tool, not a weakness. The ignominy of doubt wrestled with the excitement of realization, and she chose to embrace the latter. It was vital to structure her approach. Methodically, she began categorizing the documents, tagging them with notes about potential leads, suspicious names, and interconnections. A familiar call rang in her mind, the pulse of investigative instinct guiding her choices. Every detail mattered, but she needed to stay focused on both the immediate goal and long-term strategy. Who would be her allies, and where would she find them? Suddenly, her instincts kicked in again. It was time to return to the live networks. She needed to connect with her professor, Dr. Whitman. A renowned expert on investigative journalism, he had a reputation for unearthing dark institutional secrets, but it required navigating his often poised gatekeeping. She recalled their last conversation, where his skepticism hinted at a deeper understanding of the bureaucracy she was about to confront. But how could she present her findings without sounding naive or overly ambitious? She had to craft a compelling narrative. As she scribbled notes about her strategy to engage with him, a quiet thrill coursed through her veins. Sarah's fingers moved faster than her thoughts, and before she realized it, she had constructed a solid outline of the message she would send him: data, urgency, and an appeal for guidance. She would not only reach out as a student seeking mentorship, rather, she would position herself as his ally in the pursuit of truth. A partnership that could unearth numerous shadows stretching far beyond the library's walls. Retrieving the list of contacts from her phone, she hesitated for just a moment, the fear of rejection gnawing at her. Yet she pushed through. Rejection may be the least of her worries in the journey ahead. With a deep breath, she finalized her email, the screen's glow illuminating her resolve. Her finger hovered over the send button, and she considered, the moment of hesitation becoming a microcosm of everything she faced. Risk is part of growth, she whispered to herself as she let her finger gently press the button. In that split second, she acknowledged the noise of uncertainty fading against the backdrop of volunteers and collaborators she was about to enlist. With the email sent, she leaned back, vulnerability coming to the forefront. One last thought clung to her mind. Persistence may attract conflict, but it also beckons clarity. What if Dr. Whitman agreed to help? What revelations lay ahead that could either ruin or redeem her? The silence was pregnant with anticipation, and as she waited, she couldn't shake off the gnawing sensation that something significant was about to unfold, something that would put her skills to the ultimate test. She needed to brace herself. The larger confrontation wasn't just academic anymore. Her own values and understanding of her potential capabilities were intertwined in this pursuit of knowledge. Then it hit her with certainty. The echoes of that confrontation with the unknown figure in the library were just a prelude to the challenges ahead. Would she be ready to face those fires when they finally ignited? A fresh wave of determination surged within her, the blinking cursor on her screen mirroring the urgency of her journey. As she strapped on her metaphorical armor, ready to venture forth, a sudden sound broke through, the unmistakable ping of a response from Dr. Whitman. Her heart raced. Was this the ally she sought, or just the beginning of an even greater challenge? Sarah sat in her office, the clutter of papers and documents surrounding her like palpable tension. Each sheet represented a piece of the puzzle she had pieced together. Expose the darker machinations behind the impending corporate takeover of her town. But today, she wasn't just fighting for the community, she was fighting for her own well-being too. The phone call from Dr. Whitman had been a watershed moment. His authoritative voice offered a partnership imbued with potential guidance. Together, they brainstormed strategies that would not only highlight the issues at hand, but also galvanize the community to act. Their collaboration blossomed, awakening her dormant confidence. With each passing day, she reclaimed a little more of herself. Armed with new data and Dr. Whitman's insight, Sarah organized community meetings that attracted curious faces, hungry for truth. As she stood before the assembled neighbors, a surge of adrenaline coursed through her veins. This was her moment to transcend the ordinary, to transform her vulnerability into strength. Together, we have a voice, she asserted, her voice unwavering amidst the flickers of doubt. This is our home, and we must stand united against what threatens to tear us apart. With every meeting, Sarah witnessed a metamorphosis not only in herself, but in the community. Her neighbors rallied behind her, invigorated by the call for collective action. They drafted letters, designed flyers, and began vocalizing their concerns to anyone who would listen. Each victory, however small, marked another point of growth for Sarah. She had transitioned from a mother overwhelmed by responsibility to a fierce advocate for her home. The fight culminated at a town hall meeting where officials were poised to discuss the factory proposal. Sarah took a deep breath, flipping through her notes one last time, feeling the weight of her purpose. She approached the podium, catching sight of Jake in the crowd. His anxious expression melted into pride, a silent affirmation of the journey they'd undertaken together. The room echoed as she began her speech, her words imbued with clarity, experience, and the fire of conviction. We understand the implications of this factory. Moving forward without addressing our concerns would be a disservice to this community. What we've uncovered isn't just about noise or traffic, it's about our livelihoods, our safety, and our future. As the minutes stretched on, Sarah felt her confidence solidify. The crowds nodded, some murmuring in agreement, their shared concerns intertwining in the atmosphere like a tapestry. By the end of her speech, she could sense the collective resolve thickening in the air. They had the power. Afterward, an unexpected hand clapped on her shoulder. She turned to see Dr. Whitman, beaming with approval. "You did it, Sarah. You stood tall," he remarked, his pride unmistakable. Their shared struggle had crafted a partnership that went beyond mere advocacy. It was an affirmation of her growth. He had seen the leader within her before she had acknowledged it herself. As she embraced Jake later that evening, he whispered, "You really are courageous, Mom." His words reverberated through her, a recognition that flowed both ways. He was learning from her, but she was just as profoundly inspired by him. Together, they conquered their fears, emerging as beacons of hope. In their community, closing another chapter of her journey, Sarah basked in the sweet taste of accomplishment, not just for her advocacy, but for the assurance she had forged within herself. She recognized that reclaiming her narrative wasn't about fighting alone. It was about building alliances and mutual support. From a woman seeking solace in sleep to a commanding voice for justice, Sarah had transformed. With confidence now coursing through her veins and her values restored, she looked toward the horizon. No matter what challenges awaited, she was ready to confront them head-on. No longer a victim of circumstance, but a champion of her own destiny. Now it was your turn. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.